And welcome everybody to the final yard here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It is the post-game time. I'm your host for the day, Louis Sung, and I'm joined by Jacob Michelle of the Finns Dynasty Instagram page, which, by the way, if you are on Instagram and you need your Dolphins fix, make sure you go follow him. He is a proud member of the 5 Reasons Sports Network as a contributor. And I have Manny here. He's in the background. I have producer power today, so if I wanted to, I could make a little surprise hello, but I won't do that to him just yet. He can always pop in if he wants to. We'll be joined later by Eric Weideke, also a contributor for 5 Reasons. But for now, it's just going to be me and Jake as we talk about the Miami Dolphins defeating the Detroit Lions 31-27 in what could only be described as an explosive offensive performance that the offense deserves all the credit in the world in spite of the other issues, which I'm sure we will get into as the show goes on. So before we dive into all of that, just want to go ahead and give a quick shout out, of course, to our sponsor. That is the prizepicks.com. And if you are going to get onto prizepicks.com, make sure that you are using our promo code 5, that is FIVE. They will match up to $100 on your initial deposit. And once you do that, then you're basically getting $100 for free just for signing up and using our promo code. It's so easy. How can you not do it? In fact, I was literally 1 yard away from winning with Raheem Mostert, but then they decided to go into victory formation just a little too early, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm still going to get my money back if nothing else. So once again, go ahead and just say big thank you to prizepicks.com for sponsoring today's video. And as always, they are going to be there for you. Just use the promo code 5. That's FIVE. They will match up to $100 on your initial deposit. No rollover. Prizepicks.com. All right. So let's get into everything that happened today, because let me tell you something. As usual, when it comes to Dolphins Twitter and the Dolphins fan base as a whole, overreactions are the name of the game here, Jake. It's basically everything is on fire, the world is coming to an end, or then you sing the theme song that Miami has the Dolphins. But it's like the way that this whole thing went at the end of the day, it just proves to me once again that Mike McDaniel definitely knows what he's doing on offense. There are definitely some things to clean up, but let's be honest about something here. When you have an elite offense, you can pretty much hang with anybody, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. Offensively, like you didn't see many things for cause of concern. But on the defensive side, I think it's what we're going to probably talk about for the most part today. Because there was a lot of mishaps. There's a lot of miscommunications and a whole lot of sloppiness in terms of penalties, which is on the Josh Boyer side. But I saw a clip today where Mike McDaniel was turning to one of the assistant coaches and saying, "What the F is going on?" or something like that. I don't know.
He basically
exactly.
said, get this stuff fixed. That's what he said. Essentially, he said, fix this now because this is ridiculous. And I agree, it is ridiculous. But I don't want to chew into the defense just yet. I want to talk more about the thing that was actually firing on all cylinders. And by the way, let's be clear about something. I saw a stat that went out that Tyreek Hill has 4 games now where he's gone over 150 yards receiving, and he is now on pace for the first ever 2,000 yards receiving season in NFL history. You have to admit, for a team that supposedly sucks on offense and has sucked for a very long time, that is quite a massive jump in offensive prowess.
I mean, 100%, because for the longest time, the Dolphins' weak point has always been the offense, and this year, there's been quite a few games where their offense has ranked very, very high league wise. And I think you got to give credit to Mike McDaniel. You also got to give a lot of credit to how Tua has developed, and the fact that, like, for the most part, I think we could say that Tua is undefeated this season when he's not knocked out of the game. He was throwing dimes today. He had a couple of underthrows, but Tua and Mike McDaniel were the reason. Obviously, Cheetah and Waddle were superb. But the offense was rolling, and people are going to look to the Detroit defense and be like, wow, what a terrible defense. But I think whenever Tua is back there, it's safe to say that the offense will be clicking. I mean, I know the Pittsburgh game was kind of an anomaly. It was one of Tua's worst games of the season, but even though it was one of his worst games, he still came out and didn't really throw any interceptions. So, I mean, I'd say a terrific outing from this offense for sure.
And by the way, Tua Tagovailoa deserves all the credit in the world. We had said basically, because I think part of us was expecting Tua not to be on his game completely. I think people were kind of expecting him to still be rusty, to still be making mistakes. And again, no quarterback is perfect. There were some moments where it kind of looked like, why are you doing what you did there? But aside from maybe one, maybe two plays all game, Tua was absolutely on fire. And that's what we expected, right? That's what we were demanding, essentially. Not what we expected. That's what we were demanding from him. It's like, listen, this Detroit Lions defense is terrible. There is no reason you should not be lighting them up for at least 30 points. And you know what? That's exactly what he did. And by the way, 3 touchdown passes. Like, let me just run this down. 29 for 36, 382 yards passing, and 3 touchdowns, which honestly should have been 4, but the referees had some kind of vendetta today against the Miami Dolphins, because we will get into the penalties. Don't worry, we'll get into the penalties. But it's like, good grief, man. Like, that ball was so clearly over the line, and not even a review. Like, they didn't even bother to like take a look at it just in case. They're like, no, that's okay. We don't want to review it, but it's okay. Whatever. I don't care. They scored anyway. And on the next play, Alec Ingold, good on him, getting his first ever rushing touchdown of his career. But this offense, I'm struggling to find anything that I can say I didn't like about it.
And something that probably won't show up on the stat sheet, that should, is I've noticed a pattern where if the Miami Dolphins are down early, or they find themselves in a hole early in the game, and they have to fight some adversity offensively, I feel like Tua is at his best during that part. So the Dolphins were down 14 early today after the Braylon Sanders fumble, and then the Lions go ahead score. A lot of quarterbacks would have folded and not been able to overcome that momentum swing. But it seemed that when Tua was on the helm and he was in that pocket, you had all the confidence in the world, and he had all the confidence in the world. You'd like to think that a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, not comparing anything, but they might have folded where Tua succeeded. And it's been a pattern this whole season against the Ravens game. He's been that comeback guy when Miami has faced this adversity early on in games.
And now we are joined by Eric Weideke, who is here to talk about his stance on everything. So, what did you see today, man? Like right now, we're talking about the offense, because I don't want to chew up the defense just yet. I want to actually like talk about the thing that we enjoyed watching today. So, tell me what was going through your mind today. He's stuck, isn't he? Oh, Lord have mercy. Don't you just love technical difficulties? All right, ladies and gentlemen, Eric will be joining us in a few minutes. One of the things, by the way, I wanted to also highlight is this is something that we had talked about during Pulse of Fins Nation earlier this week with me and Ron Caniff. And people were basically getting on me a little bit. And I think Manny to some extent was too. Okay, I see Eric back, but I'm going to talk about this real quick. I personally feel like that if everybody was talking about how we need a workhorse running back, we need a workhorse. We need somebody who can carry the ball 25 times a game. Do we really need a guy who can carry the ball 25 games a game? I really don't think we do, considering, again, this offense seems to run through Tua anyway. And not only that, even if we did need a workhorse running back, I failed to see any reason why I would not just trust Raheem Mostert with that job. 14 carries, 64 yards, averaging 4.6 yards a carry. Would have been higher, except that he got stuffed right at the end there, which stopped me from getting my Prize Picks win, but that's fine. Whatever. I literally only had one more thing to go, and it was him. So, whatever. It's fine. I only get a little bit of money, not all the money. But in any case, Eric, what are your thoughts on the Dolphins running game since I'm bringing it up? Do you think we're good with Raheem Mostert, or are you still are you in the camp of Miami needs a workhorse guy?
No, I don't believe that Miami needs a workhorse, but I would like to see them get to 25 to 30 rushing attempts per game combined. And I would like somebody other than Chase Edmonds to be getting those secondary rush attempts behind Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert has never been a workhorse running back. Just given his injury history, I'm comfortable with him getting between 14 and 16 carries a game consistently. I think that he's shown that he can be efficient with those touches and get the run game moving. But I would like to see somebody else in there to maybe get you an additional 6 to 8 carries that can spell him and kind of be that additional running back, because I don't think it's ever going to be a workhorse running back. But I think you can have a workhorse running game between two combined backs.
Well, I mean, looking at the numbers here, Raheem Mostert carried it 14 times. Maybe I was missing something when I had to go to Chipotle to get my chips because they stiffed me on those. But I saw 5 carries for Tua. I don't know if maybe did Tua run the ball while I was gone. I saw him run it once. But...
He actually converted a key third down
okay.
on a nice run.
All right. By the way, I'm just so I can answer it. Jeff, if you really want to see Mike McDaniel's presser, you can go check it out. I'm sure they're going to be live streaming it on the Miami Dolphins YouTube channel. But then you'd be gone. Then you wouldn't be with us. So, just stick around for a little while. Mike McDaniel's not going anywhere. I promise you that. So 5 carries for Tua, 4 for Chase Edmonds. That's already let's see, 21 carries. Tyreek apparently carried one, so that's 22. Ahmed, 23. Engel, 24. That's so 24 carries total for the entire game. Quite frankly, at this point, I feel like the running game is exactly where it should be. You have Raheem Mostert doing most of the work as far as actually getting yards. Chase Edmonds is there to make everybody miserable when he carries the football. Personally, I think the running game is exactly where I expected it to be. And by the way, for anybody who's wondering, I currently see Tua and Tyreek sitting in the post game presser with Jalen Waddle, who just came off the podium. I love how this team supports each other. Now Tua's getting on the stage. This team is like those 3 right there. Like you got to know that they're loving playing together because both Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are having career years with Tua Tagovailoa as their quarterback. And that's really weird to say, knowing that Tyreek Hill came from a team where Patrick Mahomes is possibly the best quarterback in the NFL. Or maybe the only one who could even touch him at this point would be someone like Josh Allen. So for Tua to be able to lead Tyreek to that extent, you know that this team has something good going.
Yeah, and it's nice that Jalen is kind of like the other big receiver on that other side, because Tyreek Hill, yes, he's carrying the team in ways, but Jalen had his share of touchdowns today. He had over 100 yards. He's carrying that weight too. He's taking a little bit of weight off of Tyreek Hill to sort of carry this offense. Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, obviously carrying this offense. You saw Mike Gesicki get involved a little bit, which was nice to see. I root for him every single game. I think he's a valuable piece for this offense, and I just want him to get involved as much as possible. But yeah, guys like Trent Sherfield as well, making big plays. Cedric Wilson, obviously absent today as well.
He's not. I don't think he's coming. I don't think he's coming anymore, Jake.
No,
like at this point, Sherfield has proven that he can pretty much do anything that the Dolphins need from him at this point. Like, what does Cedric Wilson offer that Tyreek and Jalen don't do on a much better basis? I seriously believe that. At this point, I would be looking at trading Cedric Wilson either before the trade deadline, which only a couple days left, or just straight up dump him in the offseason, because he doesn't bring anything to the table at this point. If you need a third wide receiver, which is what Cedric Wilson is right now, and actually, no, I take it back. He's actually like wide receiver 4 or 5 even, when River Craycraft is available. So actually, you know what? He might actually be 6 because Braylon Sanders actually got snaps over Cedric Wilson. So at that point, what does Cedric Wilson do other than take up salary cap space? I just kind of feel like it's time to move on already.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, agreed 100%. If you can find a trade partner for him, fantastic. I don't think that's entirely likely at the moment. But it is good to see other guys aside from Tyreek and Waddle kind of excel for this passing offense. Trent Sherfield is a guy that just kind of always seems to find the open zone, and just to look at the offense as a whole, I feel like, and I don't know if we've gone over this yet on the post-game show to this point, this was a better, more complete game than the Baltimore game for me from Tua. Now, granted, it's against the worst defense, and I have no illusions.
That's what keeps it from being on top for me, because not only did Tua did what he did, not only did Tua do what he did over the course of the game, he did it all in the fourth quarter against the Ravens. Those scores were one after the other, after the other, after the other. And the defense was stepping up to give him those opportunities at the end of the day, after all. And for the Lions, it's just like, okay, yeah, it will look great. It's awesome. I'll give him all the credit in the world. He deserves it. but it's the Lions defense, you know? It's
Can-
like he did what I wanted, and he did what he should have done. It was not a like, oh my God, how did he do that? It's like, no, he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Can somebody remind me how many almost interceptions he threw today?
Maybe one. Like if you squint, but
exactly. I'm being facetious there.
No, I know what you meant. Yeah, I know, but it's like I maybe there was one kinda that got batted by another guy that you could be like, well, you know, but I'm not gonna knock him for that one because again, it's kind of like I said, if you squint, there's one. If you squint, there's one.
No, but in all seriousness, I guess the biggest thing on the offensive side of the ball was we all came into this game and on the, for the offense, we said, we need them to do what they're supposed to do. And at least on the offensive side of the football, they did exactly what they were supposed to do today. We did not see a punt. We only saw the Braylons. They did punt once?
Yeah, they did once. Thomas Mostert pinned them back real nice and deep.
Oh, that's right. I remember that at the beginning of the fourth. But we only saw one punt. The offense did exactly what was needed today. Seeing 31 points on the board was a big boost for them going into Chicago.
Yeah, and I personally feel like, again, I actually tweeted this out because a lot of people were, again, in the first half, absolutely panicking over everything that we were seeing. But the Lions going up 14-0, remember, this is exactly what the Lions were, right? The Lions had a superstar, amazing offense that could score on anybody and a defense that could not stop anybody if their life depended on it. So if you really think about it, this game went exactly as the analytics would demand that it did go. If you ran it in a computer simulation like in Madden, this is exactly what you would have gotten. A high-scoring football game where the offense scores points, but the defense can't do a doggone thing. Now, we're not accustomed to Miami being that way. In fact, if anything, we're kind of accustomed to it being the case that only one unit can perform at once. If the offense is doing great, that means the defense sucks. If the defense is on fire, that means the offense can't seem to do anything. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the defense because, again, there is some problems here. But part of me cannot help but feel like this was an outlier almost a little bit. Because, yeah, the Dolphins have had penalty problems, but never to this extent. It's always the same penalty. Like, I have never heard so many offsides penalties in a single game in, I can't even remember how long. Like, offsides on Christian Wilkins twice. They got Melvin Ingram for it twice, I think. Who else got hit with offsides? Xavier Howard got hit with offsides. So, basically, either the neutral zone was a lot closer than it was normally at, or the Dolphins are creeping up because they're anxious to get a sack on Jared Goff, which, by the way, credits to Zach Sealer for finally making that happen. But it's just like, I don't know. And Mike McDaniel is absolutely justified in telling Josh Boyer to get this stuff fixed because this is not something that you want to see out of your defense. I understand that they're reincorporating everybody back into the game. Kader Kohu, by the way, another phenomenal job, all things considered today. I don't know if I would still prefer Byron Jones to get back on the field, but that's just me. That being said, yeah, the defense needs to get everything fixed. The penalties are what really killed us.
Yeah. About the defense, I think that what I did like about the one thing I maybe liked about Flores was that the penalties were low under the Flores coaching staff. But obviously Boyer's back. But I just think McDaniel and the team have to find a way to limit the penalties. It's inexcusable when you let up that many offsides and you don't fix it. It's just not you can't do that. It hurts drives. You saw on the offensive side, it happened against Minnesota where it totally destroyed a drive that could have flipped momentum and penalties flip momentum. I'm glad it didn't really affect the outcome of this game, but it could have easily flipped in Detroit's favor. And I think that's something that should be first on the McDaniel list of priorities to address headed into next week.
Well, personally, I feel like the first on the list of priorities should be Javier's comment. I would like this team to not give me a mini heart attack every single Sunday. Like, yes, for once, please, for the love of all that is good in this world, can you please string together a performance where both the offense and the defense looks awesome and we just win comfortably? Can we just win comfortably like 33-10 or something instead of having to be down to the wire? like wondering if they're going to be able to win the game or not. Just give me that one gift. Like, let's wreck the Chicago Bears. Let's do that. I want to wreck the Bears. So now that being said, first of all, we have to address this. Liam Eichenberg, hope all is well with him. He went out with an injury. Robert Jones came in and did an admirable job in his stead, which Raheem Mostert actually managed to run right behind him and get us a nice chunk of yards there. But a lot of people were saying that I didn't get to see it myself because I was out dealing with Chipotle, but apparently he ended up getting himself injured. They refused to show the replay. Was it, like, you guys were watching the game live, right? Did you guys see what happened? Did you guys get to see how bad it looked, or was it like really that dangerous?
I didn't catch anything, in the play. All I saw was he was down after the touchdown, and they ended up carting him off, and they refused to show the replay, which leads me to believe that, it's. I don't want to speculate, but it's probably an IR stint at the least for Liam.
Jacob, did you see anything?
Yeah, the same thing with Eric. Like, they wouldn't show the replay. He got carted off. The Dolphins were very quick to rule him out. I think on Twitter they ruled him out within like 5-10 minutes, which is very telling for me, because usually they say questionable to return, but they just put the big O on that. And I'd say, yeah, definitely an IR stint. Definitely want to be optimistic, but it did not look good.
All right, so hopefully he's all good to go there. It just can't. But you know what? If they refuse to show the replay on that, mind you, remember Thursday Night Football. How many times did they replay Tua going into the fencing position after his concussion?
Enough for me to see it in my dreams at night or nightmares.
It feels like 20 times at least they showed that replay, and for them to not show Eichenberg, it must be pretty darn gruesome. So, again, hoping all is well with him. But now the Miami Dolphins have run into a new situation. So now they are not going to have Liam Eichenberg for the time being. So now here's what we do. Do we stick with Brandon Shell at right tackle and then send Austin Jackson to left guard? Do we summon Michael Dieter back to the battlefield? We have some options here to choose from. Personally, at this point, I guess I would just kind of stick with Robert Jones because he was the first one they called on. I guess I'll go ahead and leave him there at left guard. But is that really the best thing for the Dolphins? Because Brandon Shell, for all intents and purposes, has been pretty decent at right tackle. He hasn't been a superstar by any means, but he's been pretty good. Austin Jackson is set to come back pretty darn soon. So if that's the case, then do you put him at left guard or do you stick with Robert Jones?
I mean, I think they're going to end up sticking with Robert Jones at guard. If something's not broke, I wouldn't fix it right now. With the way that Connor Williams and Teron Armstead and Robert Hunt are playing, as long as you can just get league average guys around them, which I think Robert Jones is at guard, and I think Brandon Shell has played like a tackle, you've got yourself a pretty good offensive line between those three, and then two average pieces around them. You're fine. So I wouldn't touch it. If Austin Jackson comes back and just is dominating practice after practice and he just looks like a different player, then sure. But until something like that happens, I would just keep it as is. So
you're asking for the most unlikely scenario there.
Pretty much.
Yeah. For anybody who doesn't remember Austin Jackson, I am not a fan of his. I know that Alfredo is willing to defend him, but just me, nah. I'm just not feeling the Austin Jackson love here. I'm sorry. I've been burned too many times. Just like I was willing to credit Noah Igbenogany last week for making the game-winning interception, but he continues to not be good. And he even puts those freaking orange sleeves on so that he can be like a bullseye. It's like, hey, I'm over here. Throw the ball in my direction. Like, I'm not into the Austin Jackson thing. I'm willing to call a bust a bust.
I mean, with Noah, I was a big fan of him against Pittsburgh just because of that interception, but it's kind of like the guy in the pickup basketball game.
I'll give him credit for what he did. But that doesn't make him good.
Exactly, yeah, he continues to have his lapses. The nicest way to put it. But yeah, he's like the guy in the pickup basketball game who misses 10 out of 11 shots and then hits the game winner. You know what I mean? Like that was his game against Pittsburgh.
Oh, so Duncan Robinson.
Duncan Robinson's he's a little bit better than that, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So next thing that is going to be on the docket here, or at least this is something I want to bring up here. Savon Ahmed actually got the nod over Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin was actually inactive today instead of Ahmed. So it seems to me what this actually tells me is that they are not intent on doing anything other than just keep riding with Chase Edmonds here. So for better or worse, it looks like Chase Edmonds is still going to be the secondary running back, regardless of what our feelings about him are. Mind you, he didn't have a pass thrown to him today, I don't believe. So he was just purely a running back today. And even then, he didn't look all that great.
You can't drop passes if they're not thrown to you.
Yeah, exactly. You can't drop passes that aren't thrown to you. So, but that's what I'm saying, it's like, at what point do you say Chase Edmonds is just going to be dead weight moving forward? I personally feel like at this point, next season, you try to see if maybe Duke Johnson or Phillip Lindsay shake loose again, because they actually looked good in a Dolphins uniform. Chase Edmonds, I need to look this up. I'm going to look this up real quick. Over the cap, how much money?
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, in preseason and in practice, like training camp, he looked like Travis was even reporting on this. He looked really, really he looked good. He looked like a bright spot for this offense, but it kind of just like ended in the way that kind of every running back in the last 5 years for the Dolphins has ended, where it's like it looks good in the preseason and practice, and then kind of just ages off, and then kind of the dark horse that was supposed to maybe get backup carries turns out to be the starter. It's kind of a repeating pattern there. You got to go back to Jay Ajayi to get a real Dolphins running back, and I think
he was the workhorse. He was the workhorse.
He really was. Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, you've got to address running back next year. Raheem Mostert is great, but he's 30. I think this is kind of like a 1 year thing where Raheem Mostert is your lead back. I wouldn't go into next year with him as the number one. You draft somebody.
28.
Derrick Henry is 6'3",
and he'll be 20, and he'll be 29 next season.
Derrick Henry is 6'3", 250. Come on now.
Derrick Henry's getting his career wasted in Tennessee, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're not giving enough respect to Raheem Mostert. Like, what does he have to do exactly to be given the moniker of the star running back?
Above average. He's been even a little bit more above average. Like, I'm a big Raheem Mostert fan. He's in my fantasy lineup every week. Like, I'm a big Raheem Mostert fan. I just think Chase Edmonds needs to step up. He's riding a terrible wave right now, and he needs to hit holes better. First of all,
this is not his scheme.
It's not his scheme. It may not be a scheme, but he has to make the most of it. And I feel like he's coming into every game he has a chip on his shoulder, and he has to get through that. Like even if it's not your scheme, it's not even, you could argue it's not Mike Gesicki's scheme, but he's still scoring touchdowns every couple games. So I mean, he's just got to get his head in it.
That's a fair point, because the Mike Gesicki thing, he's actually started to come on pretty strong these past few games. So I'm glad that they're finally working him into the offense. That was the one factor that was kind of missing. The only thing that hasn't happened yet is the Deebo Samuel stuff, the Tyreek Hill stuff. But then again, do you really need to throw that in there when it seems like the offense seems to be able to move at will? I just feel like at that point, just save it for a rainy day when you're in the playoffs or something, which, by the way, I still firmly believe the Miami Dolphins will make the playoffs. I personally wouldn't even use the whole Tyreek Hill in the backfield stuff for a while.
Yeah, no, I think you get enough of that via end arounds and just, I wouldn't, your running game is good enough that you don't need to supplement it with something like that right now. And to your point, Lewis, I'm not a Raheem Mostert hater. I love Raheem Mostert. But the fact of the matter is he's never had more than 137 carries in a season, and there's a reason for that. And so I just think that they should have somebody to help split the load with him.
But how many carries do you need for him? Again, this is my issue. Why do you need more than 137 carries in a game?
Because he's already at 101 for the year, and we're 8.
And he's still doing really good. What's the issue?
He is. There's no problem with that. But every year he's had it cut short by injury. That's my thing, is there's a track record there, and he's at a position where he gets hit a lot. So I just wish there was somebody a little bit better behind him as insurance. That's all.
I mean, I'm glad that he hasn't got injured. Like the fact of the matter that he hasn't got injured this far, and like we've lost so many players on defense. Like it's just incredible. Like Mostert usually goes down like the first 2 weeks of the season in San Francisco. Like the fact that he's still going is awesome, and I'm glad to see it. And I guess you just got to keep handing the ball off to him until like the wheels stop turning. I guess is what you have to say to that.
All I'm gonna say is this: once upon a time, a University of Miami running back named Frank Gore blew out both his knees and then went on to be the most durable running back in like NFL history. I'm just saying.
Alien.
Just saying.
I get it. It's just the age thing for Mostert has me a little, and he's a speed guy. It's not like he's a
he runs with
guy.
power. Okay, I know that he's a speed guy, but he is not giving up he's not giving up anything in that running game. He is pushing, he is shoving, he's acting like a power guy in some ways.
Again, listen, I love Raheem Mostert. I would, you ride him until the wheels fall off. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't push my luck there knowing that Chase Edmonds is my number 2. I'm cool with keeping him at 14, 15 carries a game.
That's fine. That's all the Dolphins really need as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, for the sake of argument, to cut Chase Edmonds next season, that's a $6 million savings in cap space, which Miami is going to need, I guarantee you, because they still have to pay. They're going to be paying Xavier Howard. They're paying Tyreek Hill a ton of money. They're going to be paying Byron Jones. And by the way, here's why I really don't think that Byron Jones is going to be getting cut next season, unless you designate him as a post for June 1st cut, which that would honestly, it makes it a lot easier. But Byron Jones, if you cut him before June 1st, or if you manage, unless you trade him or something, if you don't wait until after June 1st, he's going to count as 14 million in dead money. The only way you would be able to get away from Byron Jones is if you ended up cutting him post June 1st. And if you're going to do that, you cannot wait that long to address the cornerback position. You have to know going into the off season, we are moving on from this guy, like it or not. And personally, I just don't feel like that Byron Jones is he's too good of a player to just say, yeah, he got hurt and that's the end of the story for him, because we had patience with Xavier Howard. Why can't we have patience with Byron Jones? That's all. At this point, that's where my stance is.
I think I agree with you, Luis. I think Byron Jones is one of the most underrated players on the Miami Dolphins. When he and Xavier Howard are healthy, you add a healthy Nick Needham. You add a healthy Brandon Jones, Javon Holland, and you don't have Noah having to play all these snaps, Kohu having to play all these snaps, Cross and having to play all these snaps. This defense is what the Brian Flores defense had. This new 2022 defense doesn't have those guys right now. They are the once amazing secondary for the Dolphins is no longer the once amazing and depth-filled secondary it once was. And that's what we're going to have to look for throughout the season, is how can the Dolphins win games with this depleted secondary, because Brandon Jones out for the season, Nick Needham likely out for the season, like all this stuff. And the Dolphins are going to have to make adjustments. I mean, they might have to sign some guys that know what they're doing, some veterans, because I think it's going to be very hard to win games against good offenses when you don't have a Byron, Xavier Howard dual backfield that prevents quarterbacks from even throwing the ball and even thinking about throwing the ball.
But I feel like that's what's gonna happen if Byron Jones comes back, man. Because we still have Kader Kohu back. Keon Crossan came back, made some good moves. Isn't that enough if Byron Jones comes back? Like, I get it. There's always the risk that he's going to get hurt.
If Byron Jones is the same Byron Jones, obvious.
And if you can mend the relationship with Eric Rowe, I don't think he's going to be inactive every single game from here on out, because he is a serviceable piece.
No, he's a very good piece, and I was surprised when they caught him, and obviously so was he. He was very surprised too. Like, I honestly thought he had been traded or something, and that's why he was tweeting it. But maybe he was already getting set up for the game, and they made a last minute decision to say, "Hey, you know what? We're just going to focus on special teams," because that was the justification, according to what CBS said that Mike McDaniel had said, was that it was because they really wanted to focus on special teams. I guess Eric Rowe doesn't offer much in the special teams game. That's why they wanted to go with Clayton Fagellum and Elijah Campbell, and obviously Verone McKinley was going to be playing. Then again, this is where another situation comes in you have to think about. I was surprised. I truly was surprised, although it seemed to work out for them. I was surprised that Eric Rowe had made the final roster to begin with this season. I really thought they were going to move on from him and just go ahead and say, screw it. We're going to save some money here by moving on from you. And from what I'm looking at here on my over the cap, this is Eric Rowe's last year in his contract anyway. So he's going to be off the books regardless. So with that in mind, I just kind of feel like you move on from Eric Rowe. You've still got Verone McKinley. They obviously like what they have in Elijah Campbell. They obviously like what they have in Kader Kohu. And Keon Crossan is doing some things. Trill Williams is on IR. He was going to be a serious reserve corner for us, and then he went down. So while Eric Rowe is good, he provides that veteran leadership. What does he offer that no one else can do? Aside from just that by itself, the veteran leadership, which both Byron Jones and Xavier Howard can offer on their own.
I think he's probably still your best option when it comes to being one-on-one with tight ends, just the size that he gives you, at least through the rest of this year. You want to talk about maybe at the end of this season not retaining Eric Rowe. Sure, that's fine. I think Brandon Jones can eventually give you a decent approximation of what he gives you if and when he comes back next year. But for the rest of this year specifically, I think Eric Rowe is going to be a crucial piece because I just think he's your best bet at guarding tight ends.
I know it would have been useful today with Hawkinson running around like a crazy person, but it is what it is. Something that Parrish Stevens brings up: keep building that defensive line. There's been no pressure at all this whole season. See, here's the issue. I'm going to counter that point. It's not that the Dolphins haven't gotten pressure. They've gotten pressure because you have to think about what exactly qualifies as pressure. Pressure is basically when the defense gets close enough that the quarterback has to get away from the rush and he has to make a play outside the pocket, or he has to step up to get away from it and get rid of it before he goes down. Dolphins are doing that. They're just not getting home. And that's the main issue. They're getting pressure. They just can't get the sacks. And there are several factors for why that is. When I say, because I made a comment on Twitter that Jalen Phillips always like a split second away from getting a sack. And he is. He's always just right there. If he could just get like one split second more, he would bring down so many quarterbacks. But they just get rid of the ball right before he gets there. And so with that in mind, you think of it like, why are they getting away? Well, for one thing, teams are trying to adjust for those situations. They always have a running back going out into the flat just to be like a quick dump off option, so that way they can get rid of the ball if they feel pressure coming. So that's an obvious one. If the pressure doesn't come from up the middle, then they're going to step up and they're just going to take off running anyway. A lot of quarterbacks are doing that now lately, I've noticed. So when you have guys rushing from the edge, unless the guys up front are absolutely holding the other guys back and making it so that he can't escape, there's going to be a hole for them to run through. And so that has a lot to do with why the edge rushers are not getting those sacks this year. It's because if you can't close off the running lanes for the quarterbacks in today's modern NFL, there are very few statues left. They're all going to take off like a shot at some point.
Yeah. I see a comment about this, and I'm usually not the referee complaining guy. There were a ton of plays in this game where especially for a game in which the referees were so eager to call penalties, there were a lot of I felt blatant holds that just weren't called. That maybe we feel a little bit different about the Dolphins' defensive line if they get that one or two sacks that they probably would have otherwise gotten. So, like I said, I don't feel too awful about it. In the first half, they got bullied a little bit, especially in the run game. Jamal Williams kind of was getting whatever he wanted.
More than a little bit, Eric. Let's be real.
Yeah.
They scored 27 points in the first half.
But in the second half, they went ahead and they kind of buoyed down a little bit, buckled down
themselves.
Yep. As far as I see some of the comments about Josh Boyer for the rest of this year, They had a good run against Minnesota and Pittsburgh, where I felt like the defense was good against those two teams. This was a game where you looked at Detroit's offense and you kind of got queasy, anyways, for the Dolphins defense. So I don't know how much you can really pin this on him because of the fact that you kind of looked at this on paper and you were like, oh man, Detroit's offense is pretty good. And they did what good offenses do. They scored 27 points. The Dolphins kind of buckled down in the second half. At the very least, from the point in which McDaniel yelled at him to fix it, they did indeed fix it, at least in the second half. Of course, Detroit kind of helped you a little bit, shooting themselves in the foot on some plays. But I don't think Josh Boyer's in a seat as hot as he even was in, 2-3 weeks ago. I don't think that's on the table right now.
I don't think he's in a hot. I don't think see, this is the thing. A lot of people want to blame Josh Boyer and there are a lot of things that you can get upset about because players don't execute, or maybe this wasn't the right play call at the time. And I listen, when Alfredo Arteaga talks, I tend to listen to what he has to say simply because he knows the game so well. I don't always agree with everything he says because I have my own opinions. It's not like I follow the gospel of Alf, but he is a very smart man and he constantly is defending Josh Boyer because he is a really good defensive coordinator. And it's just, I'm not convinced he's a superstar defensive coordinator, but he's pretty good. He's not terrible. And he makes adjustments. That's the thing. Like you said, Eric, they made adjustments in the second half and they got things under control for the most part. Yeah, the penalties were still kind of there. It wasn't great, but they stopped them from scoring again. That's got to count for something. That has to count for something. And so when you're able to do that, I feel like you deserve credit for being able to make the adjustments and fix it because, and this is something that I've brought up many times on many shows, the entire way that this defense functions when it's at its peak, it's on the backs of Xavier Howard and in tandem, Byron Jones. If you are missing one of them, then it's not going to look nearly as good because you are depending on those guys to basically erase one or two of the wide receivers that the other team calls their best. You cannot shadow everybody every single game. I would have loved if Xavier Howard just followed Amon-Ra St. Brown all game long. He did not. There were some times where it was somebody other than Xavier Howard covering him, and it showed. But you can't afford to do the exact same things you would normally do on defense. And so I have to at least give credit to Josh Boyer for one thing. He's making do with what he has. And unlike Kenny Pickett, Jared Goff has been in the league for a while. I was not scared of Jared Goff. I kind of look at Jared Goff like he's not even really all that great. But Jared Goff has been in the league for a while. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing as far as the fundamentals. He got the ball to his weapons. And it is what it is. It's about getting healthy. Like the Miami Dolphins need Byron Jones back out there. And that's why I'm still holding out hope that this is not going to be a gone for the season type of injury or whatever the situation is. Listening to 3 yards per carry, basically they said that it's on Byron Jones now to basically tell them, okay, I'm ready to play. So I really just hope that he will say that, okay, I'm ready to go because right now we're kind of depending on him coming back. Once Byron Jones comes back, watch how much different the defense is going to look. They're going to be able to blitz more confidently. They're not going to have to worry about, is there going to be a guy running around wide open nearly as much? Obviously, both Howard and Jones are not perfect. There's always going to be a guy open sometimes. But how much more confident would you be in Byron Jones covering the number 2 or number 1 wide receiver as opposed to a rookie like Kader Kohu? Again, granted, he's doing a fantastic job given the circumstances, but Kader Kohu is not a Pro Bowl cornerback. He's not. He's a rookie. And so we have to look at it from that perspective. When you are missing important pieces on any defense, it becomes so much more difficult. Ask the Buffalo Bills how much they've missed Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Seriously. Ask them how much they've missed those two guys. Those are like the anchors of their defense. And they still have a ton of bodies, by the way, on defense that are really, really good. Okay. And the Bills, like, they miss those guys. They just do. I'm really hoping that Byron Jones comes back. I don't agree with the idea that he's never going to play with Miami again, because I feel like, who are you going to get to replace him? That's the other thing that we haven't talked about. Who are you going to get to replace the type of productivity that you can get from Byron Jones? I'm struggling to find out where you're going to be able to do that. Is there a free agent shaking loose?
You don't have the money for a free agent like that.
Exactly. You don't have the money. That's number one. So if you cut him, you're going to have to find somebody who's like a bargain basement type deal and hope and pray that Sam Madison and Patrick Surtain can fix them. Or you draft one and hope they turn out like Sauce Gardner instead of Noah Igbenogany. And at that point, what are you going to go from there? Like, if you could tell me straight up, this is who I'm going to pair with Xavier Howard, and we're going to have a long-term tandem, then maybe I would be more open to removing Byron Jones from the equation. But right now, I don't see another alternative. And quite frankly, the fact that I don't see another alternative tells me that Miami would be wise to keep Byron Jones on the payroll, at least for one more season.
Are we at the point where it's out of the realm of possibility that they use their first-round pick on a corner? Because Howard and Jones are both aging at this point. They are. It's just, that's the fact of the matter. You need to get that depth there. You need to start looking towards, okay, who's going to be the next guy at that position.
As long as it's not a project, I'd be okay with it.
I mean, listen, guys, okay, because this is the thing that kills me sometimes. And I understand that it's like the way of the NFL to go with as young as possible. They're not 35 years old. Byron Jones is 30. Howard is 29. They're still very, very productive players. Like, you can still get a good 2 or 3 at least 3 years at least out of these guys, at least, before they start to really fall off. Stephon Gilmore is 32. He still has some stuff in the tank, and Alf was even saying, "Oh, maybe we should trade for him." But it's like, are we like, they're superstar players? Unless you're going off the idea that you're trying to predict their fall off, I'm not getting rid of good players just because they're getting a little long in the tooth. And I say that a little. It's not like they're 33, 34, 35 years old. Howard's still not even 30.
It's always better to be a year too early than a year too late on these things. I hearken back to New England cutting Richard Seymour when it looked like he was still a Pro Bowl level player. That ends up being a decent move in hindsight. You kind of have to predict these things.
Okay, but even honestly, the young guys leave New England and still suck, though, Eric. It's not.
I get that. No, but what I'm getting at is you kind of have to be in the business of predicting that, because otherwise you can't keep everybody on the payroll forever. You've already paid these guys; they're going to stay high priced. So it's just about, okay, how can we flip our roster flexibility? It's not that I think that those guys are bad or that they're going to be bad next year. It's just, and especially in the case of Byron. Byron is 30 and he's coming off of an Achilles injury. That's my concern with him. It's not just the age, it's the age paired with the injury, because we don't know what he's going to look like when he's back on the field. We don't know if the Byron of old is still there. I hope he is, but we don't know that. We have to see that before we know that for sure. With Xavier, I feel a little bit better about him aging gracefully, that he's going to be, good for the next 2-3 years. Like you say, I don't have any qualms about that. It's really more so Byron. I'm looking for the next guy that's going to kind of pair up with Xavier for the next 3 years or so.
And I still feel like Byron Jones can do that, at least in the short term. I'm not saying he's going to be a lifetime Dolphin from here on out, but there are plenty of players who aged into their 30s and still were pretty darn good. Sam Madison, for one. Like let's be honest about this. I feel like we've gotten ageist in the NFL. It's like, oh, you're 30, time to retire you, time to put you out to pasture. It took Frank Gore until he was like, well, how old is Frank Gore anyway? Just to be sure, because even as old as he is, he was still chugging away. He's 39 years old. He only really stopped playing like a couple years ago. And he was a running back, and he was still getting 3, 4, 5 yards a carry. Like, I struggle to believe that the likes of Xavier Howard and Byron Jones can't still be high-level players, even if they enter their 30s. I feel like the Miami Dolphins still have something to offer here on defense. There's still a very important missing piece. Now, if you really want to use their first-round draft pick, which, by the way, is San Francisco's first-round draft pick, so keep hoping and praying that they continue to suck with Jimmy Garoppolo and that Christian McCaffrey doesn't make a difference. If you really still want to use your first-rounder on a cornerback, that's fine. But make sure it's a can't-miss kind of guy, because if you're going to be replacing the anchor of your defense, again, this is not just a piece of it. This is not like drafting a linebacker. This is the anchor of your defense. You need Xavier Howard and somebody who's of Pro Bowl caliber in order for this defense to function the way we want it to. We need that Sam Madison, Patrick Surtain duo type of tandem. You need it because we're seeing now, this is the actual results of a team that is missing one of its key pieces. The piece, you could argue. When Byron Jones comes back, this defense is going to look completely different. I guarantee it. Because this is the kind of player that you're missing is not just a role player. This is not a rotational defensive lineman. This is one of your star cornerbacks that you are paying a ton of money to be a star cornerback, and you're missing him. You can't replace that with an undrafted free agent from Texas A&M Commerce. You can't. All right. So we're going to get ready to call in about 10 minutes or so, but I want to hear if there are any other things that are going on in your mind after this game, like something else that you want to point out that maybe we haven't talked about much.
Well,
go ahead.
Floor is open.
I would like the Dolphins to have consistent performances from both sides of the ball for maybe one game this season.
That's what I said too. Yeah,
not consistent. Great.
Like, because consistent is also consistently bad, which is
yeah, that's true. If like a Steelers game from the defense could mix with like a Lions offensive game from the offense, then we're talking. Then that's an AFC Championship team if those two could mix together.
Yeah, I mean, honestly though, this is one that you take it, you get out of the stadium as quickly as possible. You get on the plane to Chicago tonight, and you run with it. So, I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. They were down 14-0 in the first quarter. I thought it was going to go the other way.
Come on, though, guys. Like, the way you're talking, it's like, oh, my God, the Dolphins were lucky to escape with a victory today. It's like we should be, like, let's run with our tail between our legs and just be happy we didn't lose. I'm like, is it really an ugly game when the offense puts up 31 points and looks like that the Lions can't stop them?
Well, when your defense looks the way that it did in the first half, yeah, it's not. It's and the penalties. Like, there are things to clean up and move on from. You don't want a game where you're penalized again as much as you were today. You don't want a game where the defense is getting sliced up in the first half, even though they did hold them scoreless in the second half. You just don't want those things to repeat. This was absolutely every bit of a trap game coming in. That's why I say you take the win and run, just because it was a trap game.
All right, so Chicago's coming up next. Obviously, we're going to talk about it more during yard prep next week, but what are your early thoughts on that? Can this Dolphins defense, as they are, do anything with Justin Fields? I personally feel like that Justin Fields has made a lot of wow plays. He's also made a lot of wow kind of plays, if you get my drift.
Yeah, this is a game where I would hope the secondary kind of bounces back off of maybe a rougher game today. I would just dare them to throw the ball. This is the one matchup that I'm kind of looking at, and I'm actually, at least early on, pretty positive for it from the defensive perspective, because I think that the Dolphins can really buckle down and shut down the run. And if you get the Bears in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10 situations, Justin Fields is going to start chucking the ball up, or he's going to hold on to it way too long and try to make something happen, and then the sacks will come. So, if you stop the Bears' run game, you shut them down, and I think that the Dolphins are capable of that.
What's the Bears' offensive line like, though? Because the Lions had a top 5 one, and the Dolphins weren't able to do much with that running game for a while. It was only until they put it wasn't until they put the game in the hands of Jared Goff that they really started to fall off, because that balance was missing. Again, once you become one, this is a common practice with every team. Once you become one-dimensional, the defense can basically just know what you're going to do ahead of time, and they can play off of that. You have to be able to do both. And so once they fell from behind and they started letting Jared Goff do everything, well, meh. And by the way, I should point out here, Travis Fraley saying that Chicago just put up 30 points on the Dallas Cowboys defense. And we've been talking all season long about how amazing that Dan Quinn has made that Cowboys defense look this season. So should Miami be concerned that we're about to get the score run up on us?
I personally think if I would to point out a trap game on the schedule, I would point to this game, just because I don't like at Justin Fields. Like I think Justin Fields is very like he's inconsistent. He like the Bears did put up 30 on Dallas today. I think they could easily put up 30 on Miami the way that Jared Goff did. I think that it's a Dolphins game if Justin Fields does that. And I don't know, like obviously it was the preseason, but we did play Justin Fields in the preseason historically, and we made him look like freaking Aaron Rodgers. So I do think it could be a trap game, but the defense just needs to be on their A game.
I just feel like, okay, so you said this is, but Eric, you said this game was the trap game. So do you not agree with Jacob that this game was a trap game, or is every game that the Dolphins are supposed to win a trap game?
I don't think the Lions was a trap. I think you could argue that, but the Dolphins found themselves offensively. It turned into a decent win. I think that if you were to point any game as a trap game, it would be this Bears game 100%.
I guess where I disagree with that is just I think the matchup versus the Lions is worse on paper than the matchup versus the Bears, just because especially with the Dolphins defense as it is banged up in the secondary between Amon-Ra St. Brown and TJ Hawkinson. They made Jared Goff look really good. So I don't see where the Bears are going to get that separation from. The best receiver that they're going to be playing is going to be Darnell Mooney next week. So I don't see the secondary, buckling kind of the way that they did today. And, you can point to maybe what Lamar did to the Dolphins defense as maybe proof that they'll struggle against running quarterbacks. But yeah, Lamar and Justin Fields aren't in the same class. And, Justin Fields has a tendency to kind of try to make things happen, a little bit too much. The Bears offensive line is nowhere near as good as the Lions. So again, that's just why I don't really fear them quite as much.
All right, so Jacob, what's your response to that? What are you looking at for the Bears that you're saying that this is the trap game? And
I think that Justin Fields has the potential to pull an uncharacteristic thing and light up the Dolphin secondary. Maybe it's a freezing cold take of mine, but I just think running quarterbacks have always been Miami's weakness, and Jared Goff is by no means a running quarterback. He's a statue. Yes, the matchups on paper favor the Miami Dolphins as opposed to the Lions, but like I don't know. It's just an inkling of mine. It's that this could be a trap game, but I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I hope that Miami is able to get to Justin Fields early and sort of make him dance around like they have been able to make. The Dolphins defense has been able to make running quarterbacks dance around. For example, Lamar Jackson, not this year, but last year on prime time, they were able to shut down Lamar Jackson. If they could repeat a performance like that, I think Justin Fields has really no room to go. But I think I just hope I'm wrong. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm also not going to lie to you. I was absolutely terrified of Dan Campbell motivating his team for the revenge game.
I think Lions fans might disagree with you in the fact that they've been trying to get Campbell fired for the whole season now. Yeah. And that yes, he's fired up, but
doesn't do much.
There's been a lot of revenge opportunities this season with different players on different teams. And they, for example, the Baker Mayfield revenge game that did not really turn out in his favor. So the revenge games are a thing, but I just don't think Dan Campbell is a well-rounded coach per se.
Yeah, Jesse's like, revenge game. What are you talking about? It's like, remember, Dan Campbell was once upon a time the interim coach for the Miami Dolphins. And by the way, we were kidding on Mike McDaniel for all these penalties, right? Dan Campbell's Dolphins were painfully undisciplined. Like, it was ridiculously so. So they were so undisciplined. Like it sounded like they were getting a penalty every other game.
But at least Dan Campbell could do push-ups in mid-game and get fired up. So that's all that matters.
Okay, yeah. Well, you know what, Mike McDaniel, my head coach knows how to coach an offense. What does Dan Campbell know? That's just saying. I'm just saying.
Fire in the belly.
Alrighty. So, any final thoughts before we call it a show here?
I'm good.
I'm good.
All right. In that case, we're going to go ahead and say thank you, everybody, for joining us. And before we go, we're just going to go ahead and once again mention that our sponsor is prizepicks.com. It is a revolutionary fantasy platform where all you have to do is just pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 players, choose whether they're going to be going over or under their fantasy points projections, their stat projections. Again, I was literally just 2-3 yards of Raheem Mostert running the ball away from a all 5-player win and getting 10 times the amount of money that I put in. So instead, I'll just have to settle for only getting twice what I put in, which is still a win for me. So if you are somebody who needs it to be a little bit easier for them because you're not a super fantasy football guru, go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit. We're going to go ahead and call it here, but I do see one last comment because one last question. What position should we go after the trade deadline? My pick is offensive lineman. Okay, well, we'll answer that before we call it a show here. Trade deadline? Who do you want them to get more than anything?
Kareem Hunt.
I don't really have much of an opinion. Anything at this point, anything that Chris Greer could pull off. There's so many positions that need to be filled. Cornerback is probably where I would go.
There you go. That's something.
Cornerback is probably my first priority. But
that's more reasonable than yours, Eric. Kareem Hunt? Really? We're still doing this. Raheem Mostert, man. Look, Kareem Hunt. What does Kareem Hunt do that Mostert does not?
It's perfect. They'd be. Listen, I'm all about taking your strengths and making them even better. If you think Raheem Mostert is a strength at running back, Raheem Mostert and Kareem Hunt together at running back would be even better.
Yeah, but who gets more snaps?
50-50 split it. There's
no such thing. There's no such thing. One guy's going to get it more than the other. You know that's going to be the case.
Realistically, it would probably be Kareem Hunt getting more.
Yeah, y'all can't wait to get Raheem Mostert out of here. I swear. Okay, whatever. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will see you all next week for another episode of The Final Yard.